Hi friends. Okay, so today I'm gonna start talking about different systems of oppression. I know after that I was gonna talk about some other things, but a lot of what I'm gonna talk about is actually rooted in these systems. So it's kind of like it's really important to establish what's going on, so we can talk about those. Like I already established separate spheres ideology. I might talk about that again later, because it's very important to have a talk about public and private spheres. There's also a lot of different systems of oppression. Um, Poverty, religion can be considered one depending on what their religion is, which it's telling people to do. A lot of times, it's just kind of anyone in power. So you also have things like patriarchy, a lot of which is rooted from white supremacy. Racism is also a system of oppression, but that's rooted from white supremacy as well. Um, in a weird way, nationalism and some other things are considered systems of oppression just because of how they are used, weaponized, its education. But today, I want to talk about one that isn't necessarily talked. Like I didn't know about it till recently, and it's really interesting when you think about it. Um, and before I say what it is, I just want to say I'm not an expert, and I'm not going to claim to be. I get my information how I get my information. I'll put in the sources if I can. Like, I'm reading these from Wikipedia right now, just so I have it and I can elaborate on them because I understand what they are. Um, I'm also going to say that I'm biased. I do say biased things, so keep that in mind when listening to me because, like, if I'm going to say something like capitalism is a system of oppression, you might think capitalism is the best thing ever. Good for you. I respectfully disagree. I'm sorry. Just like last week, I was really biased. I think I was. So, this system of oppression is called the Cult of True Womanhood. And we see it time and time again, and it has never gone away. And it probably won't. And so, this Cult of True Womanhood, there's 4 different values. You have piety because you start talking about religion. To be a pious person, you have to be religious. So, in that way, it would make women subservient to men. And the idea is you listen to your man in a lot of religions. In this case, religion probably is Christianity. And I know Christianity definitely believes in that sort of thing. The next rung on that list is purity, which is the nastiest one because you have to be perfect. Pure. And in this case, like we talk about virginity, but purity means so many things now. And it has been twisted and twisted. So if you don't like men and you're a woman, you're not pure. If you're not white, you're not pure. If you do things unsavory things, you're not pure. So pure literally means absolutely perfect, and we associate white with pureness, probably for racist reasons. I don't know 100% about that, but probably for racist reasons. I just want you to consider that because I'll be talking in depth about purity. Then we have submission, so we have to be obedient. Women have to be obedient, which kind of goes into piety, but not necessarily. And this starts getting ingrained in us as when we were young, as does the last one, which is domesticity, being domestic, because I'm not going to say that word correctly, which has always been something we enforce in society is to keep women in the home. Obviously, this is a reinforcement of separate spheres ideology. Women are in the private sphere, so you keep them in church, you keep them pure, you keep them out of the way. And now I'm going to talk in depth about purity because it's kind of gross. So in 18 something, Seneca Falls happened, and women wanted the right to vote. And they signed this really big thing, and nothing really became of it. And a lot of women were kind of upset with how things were moving forward. So it branched off into 2 different directions after the Civil War. And women stopped kind of believing in equality for all women, and in America specifically. There was a lot of things going on in England and other places as well. But so what happened was white women decided to fight for white women. Not all of them. Some of them understood that not every woman would be free until every woman would be free. So you can't just fight for that sort of thing. And Sojourner Truths said it the best. She had this whole speech. You can probably read it. It's called Ain't I a Woman Too? Basically saying like how you classify women makes me not a woman. And like I think we can all agree Sojourner Truth was a woman, but she was black. Which is theoretically a strike against her in the purity because she was not white, so she wasn't pure enough. And so she was not considered a true woman. And so you see this time and time again with how women treat other women. So we see it in like the ideas of like slut shaming and slut culture. So that's just reinforcement of like the cult of purity. If you don't like men, so if you're a lesbian or even bisexual, you're not pure in men, therefore. And you actually see this nowadays with this concept of like gold star lesbians. So it kind of like has reversed itself. So if you're a gold star lesbian, you've never had sex with a man, which like theoretically has its problems, but you have to be pure. Like that is the biggest word, is you have to be pure. And so like as a trans woman, the cult of purity attacks me because like I am not a pure woman because I can't do pure women things. And it becomes a greater and greater problem, especially when we look at things like intersectionality. So like when we talk about second wave feminism, we see that women were working towards something to better women, but the needs of women were very clouded because of this like cult of purity idea. A lot of women at that time figured that we have one thing in common, and that's being women, and that is our system of oppression, is the patriarchy and all this other stuff. And while that is true, that's not 100% true, because some women, as I talked about in Roe, were being having forced hysterectomies, and some women experienced racism, and some women experienced homophobia, and you have all this stuff going on. And so when you say, oh, but our struggles as women is the same, it's not. Because struggles are always something that are different and personal. Everyone has a specific like narrative and story. You can't live someone else's life. So to say you're a woman first, but you're not black. You're a woman first, but you're not lesbian. You're a woman first, but you're not Hispanic. You know, you see where I'm getting. Like, you can't put that first because you experience all these things together, which is the definition of what intersectionality is. And there was this really cool group at the time that actually really, they created intersectionality. This isn't about intersectionality. I'll drop their name in the thing. They're called the Comhabee River Collective. They did really a lot of cool things. They were black, lesbian, feminists. So they were actually like some of the coolest people alive. And they had really nifty theories going on before a lot of people took it into consideration and made it a thing. But when we look at the cult of purity, we see it's how we use racism against people and homophobia. Because if you're not the pure, perfect woman, you can't do, because purity, like, we focus on, like, this virginity thing, but it can be so much more, and that's how I see it personally. Like I said, I'm biased. So we have, like, piety, so if you're not the right religion, you're not pure enough. And you have submission, so if you're a feminist, but you don't listen to other feminists who feel like they know better, you're not pure enough. There was this huge problem with sexuality in the 80s. They called it the sex wars. And it was just basically feminists fighting about porn, which was a problem because women are allowed to be sexual people. Saying not reinforces this cult in private spheres and patriarchy. Because women should be allowed to have as much sex and be as sexual people as they want, but it should not be in an objectifying, it should be in the woman's terms. And you have things like domesticity. Well, why should a woman always be in the home? That's what like a lot of conservative women said, is that like women are supposed to be in the home. If not, you're not doing something right. Oh, you don't raise your kids right because you're working. Oh, you got divorced and you're a single mother. That's not pure enough. So you have all these different problems coming from this realm of purity. And if you don't uphold it, you're not a true woman. And we're seeing that a lot now. Because we have, they call themselves gender critical people. Another term for them is trans exclusionary radical feminist. Preferably, I like to call them bigots. I don't think they need a name. They do what they want. But they have, a lot of them are like white women, some of them aren't white, and some of them aren't women, some of them are men, but they feel like they need to police what being a woman is. So they, and like part of it is rooted in like a fascist sort of state, but they are upholding these values of the call, you're not enough, you haven't hit that realm, you have to do this, this, and this, you have to do this, this, and this. And it's not like, why are you gatekeeping something that needed to be gatekept in the first place? All you have to do is just be loving and accepting. And apparently that's just really hard for these people, and that's how a lot of bigotry works. It's just really hard for them to understand someone else's life and point of view, and they feel like that theirs is the only way to live. Which obviously has issues because there's so many different ways to live. So yeah, so they're really rooted in this like purity aspect. You have to be a pure, you have to have a uterus, you have to be able to have kids. So like, which means that women who don't have uteruses, who don't have kids, aren't true women. You biologically erase these people, but they are women. A lot of people are women. Over half of the world are women. So like, you can't gatekeep being something, and that is just the core of purity. And I think that one, like, again, all of this comes from like separate spheres ideology, and just how like what you can say a true woman is. So and I'll get into more systems of oppression later, but this is how like women attack women. Because if you can't be united in something, then you can't overthrow the systems of oppression. And at this point, those systems would be things like racism, homophobia, patriarchy, white supremacy overall, because it is the biggest system of oppression, even poverty in a lot of ways. Okay, so that's it for me. I want y'all to rest and love for me, okay? And I will talk about another system of oppression next week. You'll have fun.